we've had so far. The first one was, if we supply a flash drive, can you download all of the blank forms for our corporation? Yes, we will we'll get them to our website. I'm looking over at Bob because I've officially designated Bob as my technology person. That is not, I know how to use programs on the computer and things, but how to add things to websites and all of that, that is not my strong area, but is a goal that I need to move toward improving. Last Christmas vacation, we met with somebody and talked about putting all of our new forms, all of the new Article 7 things on our webpage. And I don't think that's been completed yet because I've gone in there to check some forms. And so I promise you here, standing in front of 100 of you, that we will put that as a goal for by next school year. Hopefully, I have all of our forms in a folder, but what they have to do is take them from a Word document and change them into something so you can't alter them, apparently. Change to PDF. And so it's all ready to go, so we just need to put that as a priority, and I'll stand here and say by next school year, we'll have that done for you. I've also gotten some requests from some school corporations about like the discipline data form, if we could put that on there. So we will really work at putting all of our forms on the website. The other question was, how do we continue to manage all the RTI with fewer assistants in the classroom? How do we meet the needs of the IEP, modifications, and accommodations? That is an ongoing question, especially as I know we are all looking at how to decrease our budgets because of the situation that our state is in. It's trickling down, it's hitting education. And so I know your superintendents are meeting with you. Bob and I met over Christmas, came up with some ideas, hopefully not impacting kids, but with the suggestion of maybe reducing paraprofessionals. I think this is going. Reducing paraprofessionals, that's a concern for all. And we're going to have to look at individually what we're doing and how we can do it. I don't have an answer. If somebody has an answer, raise your hand because it is a struggling question that we're all looking at. Anyway, the good thing is, if this goes during my presentation, I think I can you hear me back there, Kathy? All right. If it goes, I will do that. Okay. So what my presentation is going to be, and as we talked about moving all of our forms onto our website, today I'm going to tell you that 10 of our blank forms in our section 4 of our staff manual, you can create by using I-START-7. Is there anybody in this room that does not know what I-START-7 is when I refer to it? Good. When I came into my position last year as the assistant director, that's one thing I had told Bob that I was interested in bringing with us. I had been in on the development of Tranquility some 15, 18 years ago, and I had even worked for Tranquility doing presentations on how to use the program. And once I saw I-START-7, and over the last 5-8 years, I've watched the state and what they were developing, and went to in-services. And finally, when I was getting my director's license, I saw a presentation and came back to Bob and said, they've got it where we're ready to change. And so I got I-START-7 in. We did in-services last year. We left Tranquility there for the special ed staff, but on about June 3rd, when all the schools were out, I sent an email to all the tech people and said, take it off. Who was the person that came to me on about June 10th and said, where's Tranquility? We can't do this conference. And I looked at Bob and said, Bob, remember we signed the last day of school, tranquility's gone, we get to do this conference on I-START-7. And so I helped the case conference coordinator and myself and the teacher, we all put information in and got ready to go for that conference that they were holding in June. So I-START-7 is where we're at, so I want to show you how you can move from some of our paper forms to I-START-7. What I'm seeing is that work is being done twice. In the STAT process, progress is being monitored, data is being collected, forms are being completed, written notices are given to parents, paper forms are in the file to document everything. Then, what does the special ed teacher have to do before that case conference? What do? You read it out again, don't you? So work is being done twice. If you use I-START-7 from the beginning, you can use it to collect your data and create the forms that are given to the parents. It's a way to record it all in a central location. The case conference coordinators can grant access to the people who need to be involved with that student. Most of your STAT teams have a special ed teacher sitting on that team. Those special ed teachers, they probably would be, the person in the suspected area of disability. And so all they have to do is send a quick email to the case conference coordinator and say, this kid's in STAT, please assign him to me. So the special ed teacher can do it, or we can work at granting access to your STAT team chairperson, which that is why today I wanted to make sure that the STAT team coordinators, because a lot of them are not special ed people, we can work with your case conference coordinators to give you a password and to give you training on how to do this. And the information is all recorded under the evaluation tab. And as you learn I-START-7, you will see that everything is tab related. So as I go through this presentation today, 10 of our current forms are currently, if you look at it's this one page here in my handout, I went through, this is the blank forms in our manual. This is our index. I went through our blank forms, cross-referenced them with I-START-7, and the ones that have the little arrows, all of those forms can be completed on I-START-7. Now, those of you who do not use I-START-7, you may not understand my coding here, but so then it says, let's say, vocally have referral, and then I said, I-START-7, initiate notice of case conference. Those are the tabs where it's found. So your case conference coordinators and your special ed people understand that. If you go down to parent re-notification form, that's found on I-START-7, the initiate tab under arrangements. If you go down to form R104, the written notice of proposal for initial evaluations, that has been revised January 2010. It's 2 pages, but you can also find it by using I-START-7 evaluation notice. And I'm asking each one of you, someone take responsibility, this is in your folder, to take this back. And usually I've asked the case conference coordinators to do this, but you can each do it in your building. But case conference coordinators, in about a week, when you go around the building, will you please make sure that this has been replaced in the manuals? Yours are punched, so they're ready to go in the manual. Make sure that your STAT team referral person has the new form. Those of you that, as you're doing your referrals this year, some of you have been lucky enough to have conversations with Kathy about correcting the referral forms. And so, I think we're far ahead of us. Yes.
Okay, so this is, we can enter all this stuff into I-START-7 regardless of whether that child has been, this is all.
Yes, regard, yeah.
So what happens to all this if we decide it's not eligible?
He stays in data land. He's in there because in 2 years when he goes to the junior high, and the junior high, parent may ask The junior high doesn't have to come back to you. It is all in there. So, but I do ask, if you feel that you need the paper form, here's the section. And at the back of the paper form, what I've done is change, because the areas that we had on Form R104 before did not match the checklist. So Kathy, this September or October when I was out, she even took the time to develop another checklist for you to match that form. But just throw all of that away. And if you must use the paper form, here it is. But I'm going to show you today how to do it on iStart 7. So you really shouldn't need this form, but in case you do, like if somebody comes in the summer or, you know, whatever, you do have the paper form, but I'm going to show you how to use iStart 7. And then all the other forms are there. I'm not going to go into detail. Yes?
The record review then still needs to be done on paper.
Yes, right.
We can cover it at our staff meeting.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, the record review still needs to be done on paper. There are still the paper requirements that are there, but I'm showing you what is available online. Yes, Dina?
So for the areas on the record review that overlap with what you put into iStart 7, can we put C iStart 7, or do you want us to double duty, right? Type it and write it? Because some of it overlaps.
Why don't you work with your school psychologist, because I have asked some of them to use the evaluation part and record all of your testing stuff in there this year. We're sort of doing that as a trial. And so work with your school psychologist on how that's going to be done in your individual corporations. I have not required the school psychologist to do that and move fully this year, because there's a little bit of word out there that the format may change a little bit to be improved for next year. So next year we'll probably be moving into that area, little steps at a time. Okay, this next screenshot here is actually of iStart 7, and it's talking about the existing data. And this is what the screen looks like when, and you can't see on your copy, but this is yellow right here. So it's under the evaluation tab because that's yellow, and it's the existing data. You describe the strengths of the student, so you would put the strengths in there. I'm going to skip this. You would describe the instructional strategies, research-based intervention in which the student has participated in, and the response to the instruction or intervention. The response is what I'm finding on IEPs that is not there. A lot of times the intervention is there. I can see Wilson reading, I can see Read 180, all of these interventions, but there's nothing about the response. Then there's tabs where you can progress monitor data, you can attach files, you can upload things. And a lot of your data keeping is already on some type of an electronic document, so you can upload it here. What is important is that parent permission is not needed for the staff, but they must be notified of the interventions, what will document adequate progress, and over what time. And in Allison's packet, she did give you a letter that you could use if you're not doing this. The important thing is that the parents are notified, but you do not need to have permission. Now, I skipped this question here. The student has failed to make adequate progress after an appropriate period of time for a reason. The yes, no generates the timeline. People are, that on the paper form, you had a choice. What was, was it going to be a 20-day timeline or a 50-day timeline? And people didn't know how that was generated or why. But it's linked in the law back to that question. So what iStart 7 will do for you is when you answer this question, it automatically picks your timeline accordance with the law. If you answer no to this question, then it's a 50-day timeline. If you answer yes, then it's a 20-day timeline. And back to your question, Jackie, that you asked earlier about the 6 weeks that teachers say, they've been in these interventions and we go. If the student's failing to make adequate progress after after an appropriate period of time, then it's a 20-day timeline, and by golly, you better have a lot of data collected for that school psychologist to gather to write a 20-day timeline report. The data collection should all be done, and they should be able to come in and have everything they need. So that's why it's important to do this over an appropriate period of time. For those kids not in RTI, if they're autistic, if you're looking at visual, if you're looking at mild or moderate, if you're looking at hearing impaired, the law does not say the kids need to go into RTI. So you answer no to this, and then they're automatically on a 50-day timeline. So there's no more questioning, am I in compliance with the law? iStart 7 automatically does that for you. It also drives the timelines for reevaluations for special ed teachers. Your first choice here would be by the next ACR. You don't need that additional information within a specific timeline. You're just doing it to gather information. A lot of times speech paths use this to gather information next year. They might be putting somebody on consultation for the next year. Then they do their report right before the case conference. They have it, and they could dismiss. If you choose the second or third choice, then it's on a 50-day timeline. If you choose the fourth choice, which is there is no need for reevaluation, then there's no timeline. Then next year, you ask the same question. The 3-year reevaluation date type monitoring is sort of going away because with iStart 7, you're required to address this question every year. But if you do notice, it is still put there, and it's called the anniversary reevaluation date. Once you select the disability, there's 13 areas that you click on. You could click on what area are we looking at, and in this example, I chose specific learning disability. It automatically checks the test you need. There's no looking at the graph or looking at the chart, and then there's no having. I'm going to make you guys all think, do you guys all know Kathy? When I say Kathy, there's no she's waving in the back. If you want to put a name with the face, Kathy checks this when it comes in. And what we have found over the last year is that we were having a lot of mistakes. A lot of people really weren't sure on what they were doing. So for initial evaluations, this is what's required by law. It's automatically there. For reevaluations, J.E.S.S.E's best practice policy is to keep all of the areas selected for reevaluations if it's in the same disability. If it's looking at a different one, you keep them all. So if you're looking at the child speech impaired, and you're looking at a learning disability, then you would keep all of them for learning disability. If a child is speech impaired and you're just wanting more information for speech impaired, you can click off some of these, but best practice is to keep them all there because you're saying you're just reviewing it. Compile it all into a report. As the referral, OT and PT are sort of not easy to find because it's not an area that the law says we need to evaluate, but I'm going to show you how to get there. If you want a PT eval, then you select available educational relevant medical info, and then down in the text box you type PT and any other information in that open text box. Put why you're asking for it. If you want an OT referral, select assessment of motor skills and sensory responses. Do not click assessment of motor skills for vision. We have a lot of that. Or for travel skills as related to vision. And again, click that and then down in the open text box, type in any information that you want. I want you to work as a team. Make iStart 7 a part of your team. Train additional staff on iStart 7. Contact your case conference coordinator for training. Include your school psychologist. Decide how you are going to gather things at your local level. The idea of iStart 7 is everything can be recorded here in the evaluation tab, and so there's no need to email anybody additional reports that may need to be included there. You just put them in iStart 7. But the problem is that stuff has to be there in a timely manner to allow the school psychologist to then review that information, write their report, and have that report into the school 5 days prior to the case conference. There's a lot of times where I'm hearing from people, the school psychologists are coming to me saying, I don't have this piece yet from the school, and I'm going to be in Indianapolis for the next 2 days for a conference, They're going to be out of town. You've got to keep that in your mind, and we need to start not waiting until the last day to get things done, because these reports are to be available to the parent. All we need to have is that parent walk into the school and, say, I want my report, and it not be there. You need to include your special education teachers in your staff team if you don't already. And also remember, the speech pathologist must be involved if kids are currently in speech and you're asking for a reevaluation. It's not an initial. A lot of times that has been forgotten. I personally have been in conferences where, we're doing speech conferences for a kid that's in articulation difficulties, and the teacher is in the conference and really doesn't even say that the kid is struggling academically and reading. The speech path's not aware of it, and the next thing we know, 3 months later, that kid's referred for a learning disability, and it's not an initial referral. Once a kid has been made eligible for special education, then everything after that is a reevaluation. So somewhere in your system, of organizational communication in your building, you need to know what kids are already identified. In review, when we're moving paper to iStart 7, data collection summary for stat. And I say summary because you're going to have your record reviews. The teacher's going to have all of their data. This is really when you're getting to a summary. It can now be used on iStart 7. The evaluation process can now use iStart 7. The initial findings meeting report can now use iStart 7. And what I like about this one, when you go to click this report off, the initial findings, you can click that you want the initial findings report and you want the notice of the case conference. So your case conference coordinator has already set this up. Everybody knows when the notice is. It's been sent to the parent, and the parent got it in the mail or got it home with the student, and it's on the counter somewhere under the stack of the next papers that have come in. And so 5 days prior, you need to give that parent the initial findings report. You can automatically attach a re-notification of the case conference, so it's a reminder. Ann?
You said send home with the student. It's very important that an initial findings report gets sent in 5 days prior. Sometimes if it's sent home with the student, it doesn't get home.
The only time I would ever send home something with the student is if I had talked to the parent that afternoon and said, check Johnny's book bag tonight because it is in there. But yes, you do not want to start that process of just sending home. And the problem is sometimes we run into some timelines. If you're at the last minute, it's the 5 days before. That's why we preached last year to do them at least 8 days before, because then you allow 3 days for mailing. Case conferences, written notices, all must now be used on iStart 7. And if you notice, I've sort of used the word written notice instead of IEP. And that's what you're doing. You're giving the parents the written notice of what you are proposing to do. And yes, it has what we formally call the individual education program within it. But all you have to do is notify the parent. If they don't show up for the conference, You go ahead and give it to them. You do not have, for an initial, you have to have signature to implement a program. For an annual case review, you do not need to have permission anymore. We need to document our attempts to get that permission. But after you've mailed it to the parent and 10 days later, or you get, your case conference chairperson has given a phone call to them and maybe even a home visit or certified mail, I have asked the case conference coordinators not to do home visits by themselves because a lot of times, they don't have the answers. So that's why I've asked them, you're going to have to team up with your administrator and go do a quick home visit. And so you can go from there. But using I-START 7, there's ways to document that also. Is there any questions on this part before I move on about using I-START 7 more for other paper processes? Yes?
You use this for a kid that's not special education?
Yes.
As you're doing the SCAT process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then if he's never qualifies, okay,
Mm-hmm.
move him into special ed, and it just...
We will deactivate him. The case conference coordinator will go in and deactivate him, but all of his information will stay there. And then in another year, or if he goes to another school that is using I-START 7, then it is there. 92% of, I think it's 92, it's in the 90s right now, 92% of the school corporations in the state of Indiana are now using I-START 7. A lot of your move-ins that you get that are sort of transient around this area, I bet a lot of them are coming in with I-START 7 because South Bend is now using it, Elkhart's using it, Warsaw, which includes all of their LEAs, are using it. Logansport has started this year, so everybody is sort of moving that way. So when a kid moves into you, and that's why it's important that we talk with our STN people, and that they upload more regularly than once a month, which they were required to do, because I-START 7 is linked to STN. So when you get a new kiddo in your school, and your school uploads your STN data, and you know how those parents would say, oh no, my kid wasn't in special ed. Never. And then 3 days later, once they roll that and the STN computer talks to the I-START 7 computer, all of a sudden that kid shows up in your school corporation. And it needs to be assigned. And there's information there. You can look. And you can go back, and this kid's now an 8th grader, and you open it up, and you look at the last IEP within 4th grade, and they dismissed him. So that's just information that you get. And the state is moving toward a website called Learning Connections, I think, .com, something, or .org, whatever. And the state is moving toward this website, and that's what they're wanting everybody to use to get information where our I-START scores are stored. That's why they're looking at redoing I-START 7, because what they tell us is the I-START 7 data is stored in this silo, and all of the I-STEP scores and other statewide monitoring is in this silo, and there's no way to get it from A to B. And so what they're doing is they're rewriting I-START 7 so it can be moved over to this silo, and so things can talk to each other. I don't know. I told you at the beginning of this, I'm not a tech person. But that's where the state is moving, and that's why they want us to get more involved with this data keeping. When, in moving a little bit to continue with the I-START 7 discussion and sort of bridging into this afternoon's discussion of writing legally defendable IEPs. This has been a topic that's sort of been dear to my heart for about 5 years. Once you go through a due process hearing, it will become dear to your heart. And so when I review IEPs, I'm thinking, a stranger should be able to review the IEP and understand what is needed for this kid. As he moves into a new school, you should be able to take that information and move it and immediately start working with the kid. You all have gotten IEPs from outside of the J.E.S.S.E co-op, and you look at that and you go, what the heck were they doing? What were they working on? I don't understand this. My goal is to help our J.E.S.S.E teachers move into a direction where when their IEPs are shared electronically around the state, that we don't have those people sitting back going, what are they talking about? So after we did the technology part of I-START-7 last year with all of the trainings, then everybody was asked to do at least one. Some switched right away last October and did all of them, but everybody was to do them. So I reviewed over the summer an IEP of everybody. You got the feedback from me. It is a part of ways to improve, ways to grow. Then I spent Christmas vacation reviewing another IEP that you guys had completed, more so, after you had done a few. And I know that my idea to save money was to send all of these letters out with the superintendents on Monday at the board meetings. And I have found that we've got some problems. They may still be sitting in some superintendents' cars. So if you know people that your schools have not gotten a letter from me, ask your superintendent where that letter may be because they took them back to your school corporations. In reviewing the IEPs, 53 out of the 120 some, I think, 53 of them I noted needed to improve in the area of goal writing. I'm not going to go into detail today. That's going to be next year to really concentrate on that. But as you have heard throughout from what Allison was talking about in the STAT process, you need to write goals that are measurable and observable. From what Dave was talking about in his data collection, it needs to be measurable and observable. From what Wendy was talking about, it needs to be observable, and by using this format, it makes it measurable. That's all I was looking for, is that they were measurable and observable and linked back to the special education need. In passing 9th grade English is a goal for every student. It is not linked to their special education need. What is the skill area that needs to be improved? That's what I was looking for. I didn't get real picky. And that was something that we noted in August that needed to be improved. Also, progress monitoring data. Numbers from the I-STEP and any other ongoing testing data that you have may go here. Data, a lot of it, they just had the I-STEP where they had it down in present levels. There needs to be some data there. These are the top 6 areas that I'm going over today for the co-op that need to be improved. The next one was response to interventions. I said a lot of interventions are listed, but the students' responses were often omitted. If you notice, this is where I'm saying that special ed teachers are writing in things that were probably done in a STAT team. Also, program modifications. We talked about this earlier today. If a program is modified, then it is a change in curriculum. It's an accommodation if it's reducing the number of problems, allowing a calculator to be used for math. Those are all accommodations. But the clicker is the hard thing to remember. What did Tranquility ask for? What did we call them? We called the accommodations modifications. And so it's a change in mindset. What are accommodations? What are modifications? And a lot of you had them listed under modifications, but they were really accommodations, so they needed to go up underneath the I-STEP stuff. If a child is on a non-diploma track, then that child is having a modified program, a modified curriculum, and it must be noted there. Present level of performance, an area we need to improve in. Just write what level the student is currently at. I should be able to read that and get an idea of where the current student is currently at. Using master goals from the previous year is a great thing to put in present level of performance. You've done your accommodations, or you've done your progress toward goals that you've been sending home to the parent every grading period. You've got that. You know where they're at. Put that in your progress monitoring. And then summary of findings. This goes for the transition IEPs. Many of them listed the method to gather the information, but did not summarize the findings. And so somebody reading this kid, they've moved now, they would not know what you were basing your information on in your goals under employment. It should be linked to something. Under your employment goal, if you said that they were going to be working toward auto mechanics, then in your summary of findings, I should be able to link that. Those are the things that I was looking for. I'm doing it to help you grow, to help you improve your IEPs. This is by no means an evaluation method. I am here to help you because it's a change. You need to keep in mind your data, your documentation, and your written notices, your IEPs to parents. And the question you need to think when you do these, and when you're in the case conferences, would they stand up in a due process hearing? Do I have my data to back up what I have put in here? Because yes, you can testify at a due process hearing, but the first thing they ask you for is all of your data. And then they complete all of your binders of evidence. And you'll go into that due process hearing and the lawyer will tell you, please turn to page 234. And if you turn to page 234 and you can't explain that, then you're sitting there with the blank look on your face, and your school corporation might as well just look at the parent and say, what do you want to do? So just make sure that when you're going through this process that you think you can stand up to the due process hearing. Lunch is going to be from 12 to 1. I said, let's move your cheese. I was envisioning that you were going to be sitting at some tables that weren't going to be set up for lunch. What I mean by this is, as I travel around to all the school corporations, you guys are all doing great things. You're all at a different level. You all have things to share with each other. I was going to ask you to maybe sit with, only 2 people from a school corporation. However, you've all drank out of the water glasses and you've touched the spoons probably for your tea or coffee. So when you're waiting in line, you're milling around, please take this time to meet people from other school corporations and see what they are doing. We will come back at 1 o'clock and we will have Monica Conrad. Are there any other questions? Okay, Wendy has the website. The website to download the forms is www.asperger.net. Is it on your chart? Okay. That's it, and you can buy anything you want there. I mean, they have all kinds of resources.